Hello and welcome to the Crime and Sacrifice podcast. This is episode 3, Aaron and Denise. Along the Napa River, and less than an hour's drive from San Francisco, sits the waterfront town of Mare Island, a peninsula that juts into San Pablo Bay that is a part of the larger city of Vallejo. Aaron Quinn was a physical therapist that lived on Mare Island and worked in the area. He was out socializing with coworkers one night in late 2014 when he and fellow physical therapist Denise Huskins noticed a spark between them. They began dating soon afterward. Denise had grown up in Huntington Beach, over 6 hours away, and was described by family as a strong woman with a desire to help other people. She had lived on the East Coast in the Boston area for a time. She was at the Boston Marathon when the terrorist attack happened. It was maybe this event more than any other that shook her enough to finally want to return to California. Things progressed quickly between Aaron and Denise, and though her parents hadn't even met him yet, after several months of dating, Denise seemed incredibly happy with their relationship, and even told her dad that she was in love. By March of 2015, they had been dating for 7 months, and Denise was 29 years old. Aaron was 31. At approximately 2 p.m. on the afternoon of March 23, 2015, police received a desperate call from Aaron Quinn. He informed them that there had been a burglary at his house on Mare Island the night before, and that his girlfriend Denise had been with him, but was kidnapped in the middle of the night by a criminal group that was holding her for ransom. Police soon responded to the scene, though Aaron's story immediately raised some red flags. Though there were potential signs of a struggle or a burglary, there were other parts of his story that just did not sit well with the seasoned investigators on scene. First, it was 2 p.m. when Aaron called. Aaron seemed mostly unharmed. Why had he waited so long? It also seemed off that this supposed criminal gang requested only $17,000 for Denise's ransom. Though they were skeptical, police were still measured in their public response, careful to state that Denise was missing, potentially kidnapped, and beginning the painstaking process of collecting evidence from Aaron's home. Police also asked for a DNA sample, took his phone into evidence, and asked for his email record and even the clothes on his back as potential sources of evidence. And to his credit, Aaron complied with all of these requests, even consenting to a polygraph test. It seemed clear that police were not the only ones skeptical of Aaron's story. Even Denise's father, who made a public appeal for his daughter's safe return, seemed to have a difficult time grappling with the story that Aaron had provided.
This doesn't seem right. That she would just let somebody take her. I don't know. She's not that type of person. If he was tied up, that would, maybe something like that was happening. I don't know. The biggest fear is the horror that she might be going through. That's my biggest fear.
Police soon recovered Aaron's Toyota Camry not far from his home and impounded it for further testing as they continued gathering evidence from the home. Continued questioning Aaron. For Denise's family and friends, that agonizing first day passed without answers. Police teams and volunteers continued to search for Denise the following day when an email popped into the inbox of the Chronicle newspaper in San Francisco. The sender claimed to be one of the kidnappers of Denise and said that he was part of a group that was practicing their kidnapping for ransom tactics. The group also made sure to say that Denise Huskins was alive and that she would be returned unharmed the following day. A proof-of-life audio file was attached to the email, scrubbed clean of all identifying digital characteristics. The woman on the recording claimed that she was in fact Denise.
I'm kidnapped, otherwise fine.
I'm kidnapped, otherwise I'm fine. Earlier today, there was a plane crash in the Alps, and 158 people died. The woman also mentioned some information that only Denise would know.
My first concert with Bethany and her mom, to Blink-182, Bad Religion.
Upon listening to the audio, The Chronicle immediately contacted authorities and forwarded the information to them. It became clear to police that this very well might be Denise, though this development didn't convince them that Aaron was innocent of wrongdoing. Instead, they began exploring a new theory and considered whether Aaron and Denise might have concocted this whole story together as some kind of elaborate hoax. With this angle in mind, they realized that Aaron Quinn's cell phone, which was still in their custody, had been switched mistakenly to airplane mode and had received 2 incoming calls that day from an unknown number at 8:31 p.m. and 8:33 p.m. Wondering if this might have been Denise or some unknown accomplice, police traced the call and discovered that the calls had been made from the Lake Tahoe area. Publicly, they were quiet about these suspicions, and another day passed without any new information being released. On March 25th, 400 miles away from Vallejo City in Huntington Beach, a gardener was working on a property when a young woman approached and asked if she could borrow his cell phone. She made a phone call to police and told them that she was Denise Huskins. Police soon arrived on scene to take her statement, and Denise spoke to police in Vallejo over the phone. What she told them lined up with Aaron's version of events as she spoke of the kidnapping, of being held for ransom by a criminal gang for the 2 days that she had been missing, though her story took a dark turn when she mentioned what had happened to her in captivity, that she had been sexually assaulted. To Vallejo police, her story seemed as far-fetched as Aaron's, and this is what they suggested to her as they asked her to come back to Vallejo for an interview. Police on scene reported that Denise seemed calm and without obvious signs of trauma. This was not how they believed a kidnapping victim would react. Denise soon disappeared into the arms of family and began speaking to Vallejo police through her attorney. Just a few hours after Denise reappeared, the Vallejo Police Department called a press conference. They were ready to go public with their suspicions, as reporters clamored to hear what police had uncovered and what had happened to Denise over the last 2 days.
It's confirmed that Mr. Aaron Quinn and Miss Denise Huskins are in a dating relationship. And from this point forward, I will not refer to them as a victim or a witness. Mr. Quinn was the first to report that his girlfriend, Miss Huskins, was forcibly taken from his home in the early morning hours of Sunday by unknown strangers, and at some point they made a ransom demand in the amount of $8,500. The statement that Mr. Quinn provided was such an incredible story, we initially had a hard time believing it. Upon further investigation, we were not able to substantiate any of the things that he was saying. Now let's move on to Miss Huskins. So we know that Miss Huskins is also from the Huntington Beach area. On today's date, at roughly 10:30 in the morning, we received a call from the Huntington Beach Police Department indicating that they have located Miss Huskins. A Huntington Beach police officer briefly spoke to Miss Huskins, and all indications initially was that she would be cooperative with the investigation. Miss Huskins indicated that she would be happy to meet with our police detectives and provide us a full detailed statement on what had occurred so that we could further this investigation. Subsequently, the Vallejo Police Department and the FBI made arrangements to have Miss Huskins flown up to Northern California in a jet. As of right now, we have not heard from Miss Huskins, and we are no longer in contact with any of the family members.
Do you consider her a fugitive right now?
Not at this very moment, no.
Did you say the ransom was $8,500?
Yes, sir. $8,500. So over the course of the last few days, if I could kind of put things in perspective, we've had over 40 police detectives from the local, state, and federal levels, and over 100 support personnel assisting in the investigation, working round the clock to help locate Miss Huskins. That is a tremendous amount of resources that, in my opinion, was wasted on what I will classify as a wild goose chase. It's a tremendous loss. Mr. Quinn and Miss Huskins has plundered valuable resources away from our community and has taken the focus away from the true victims of our community while instilling fear amongst our community members. So if anything, it is Mr. Quinn and Ms. Huskins that owes this community an apology.
What do you estimate you guys spent for the search?
Honestly, I wouldn't be able to give you a ballpark figure at this point.
Would 8,500 cover it?
Yes, sir.
Can you tell us Mr. Huskins' reaction once he began to realize that his daughter was involved in this?
Well, we don't know because he won't contact us anymore.
Did Mr. Quinn admit to you that this was a hoax?
No, they have not.
Is there any evidence that makes you know conclusively that this was a fake? I mean, did something come up that made it without argument that this was all a hoax?
Well, I can tell you that our investigation has concluded that none of the claims has been substantiated. And I could go one step further to say this, that this was not a random act, and that the members of our community are safe, and that they have nothing to fear.
Comparisons flew between this incident and the 2012 movie Gone Girl, which had only been released a few months beforehand. They were painted as a selfish, delusional couple who wanted a quick payday, and Aaron left his home on Mare Island as they were forced into a kind of hiding and refused to give media interviews as Vallejo police tried to make good on their promise of pressing charges against the two. But police honed in on the phone number that had called Aaron's cell when Denise was still reportedly missing. They were able to track it to a prepaid phone purchased from a Target store in Pleasant Hill. Target was then able to provide a video of the person who purchased the phone. It was grainy and lacked detail, but depicted a light-skinned male with dark hair and a medium build, who looked similar to Aaron. Police felt confident this was either Aaron Quinn himself or some unknown accomplice that was trying to help the pair pull off this fabrication. They also tried to find a way to prove that the email sent to the Chronicle was either sent by Aaron and Denise themselves or perhaps by the same accomplice. The emails continued to come, both to the Chronicle and this time also to the Vallejo Police Department itself. Outraged emails from somebody furious that the police didn't believe the couple. The emails detailed what had occurred during the kidnapping itself, including photos of a fake gun apparently used in the crime. A few months later, on June 5th, a family in Dublin, California frantically called police to report that an intruder had broken into their home and attacked them. When police arrived on scene, the couple described an assailant dressed in all black who had appeared in their bedroom in the middle of the night, shining a flashlight into their eyes and trying to bind their hands with zip ties. A violent struggle erupted, and the husband was left with a giant gash on his forehead, but otherwise the couple was unharmed. The assailant dropped his cell phone before fleeing. Dublin police quickly got to work on identifying the phone and tracing its number to an address in Orangevale. When they called the landline there, a woman named Joyce Muller picked up and reported that the prepaid phone belonged to her adult son, Matthew, who had been living in the family's vacation home in Lake Tahoe. Matthew Muller came from an exceedingly normal family and home. His mother, Joyce, and father, Monty, were educators in Fair Oaks, California, outside of Sacramento. They were good parents and respected members of their community. Neighbor Steve Reed called them solid people, good citizens, proud of their son. Matthew had attended Bella Vista High School and was, by all accounts, a well-adjusted kid that was worthy of his parents' pride. He played saxophone in the school band, and his classmates remembered him as a friendly and funny kid. He was still carrying around some of his baby fat when he graduated and almost immediately enlisted in the U.S. Marines in 1995. Though he never saw combat, Matthew was able to see the world during his service, stationed in far-flung places like Japan, Australia, and the United Arab Emirates. He wrote for the newspaper on base and played trumpet in the Marine band. After being honorably discharged in 1999, Matthew's successes continued to come. He married his longtime girlfriend and enrolled at Pomona College, just outside of Los Angeles. There, he studied science and technology and even graduated with summa cum laude honors. He developed an interest in working in the legal profession and was soon on his way to Harvard Law School. Matthew was one of the youngest scholars to get voted onto the faculty there and ended up in the prestigious position of being able to train and supervise some of his own peers. He wrote articles about immigration law that were published in law journals and seemed poised to become a well-respected member of his field. But despite how rosy things may have appeared on the surface, there was trouble brewing beneath his calm and successful facade. He would be extremely motivated and fixated on success at one moment, and then would find it difficult to get out of bed the next. In 2008, he was diagnosed with bipolar disorder and even a kind of psychosis, for which he was prescribed mood stabilizers, antidepressants, and antipsychotics. Despite having an answer to what was bothering him, his behavior and mental condition seemed to be getting even worse. In 2009, Mueller was questioned in a few terrifying home invasions. In the first, which took place on September 29, 2009, a man dressed in black broke into a young woman's apartment while she slept. She woke up to find an intruder telling her that he was going to rob her and steal her identity. She was handcuffed and blindfolded with blacked-out swim goggles. She was also forced to consume some kind of sedative, and after getting her personal information, including social security number and date of birth, her attacker fled. The second incident, which took place a few weeks later on October 18th, involved an intruder dressed in black again who broke into another young woman's apartment. She awoke to find the stranger straddling her. He forced her to give him identifying information, blindfolded her with goggles, and restrained her. This time, the suspect attempted to rape her and also injected her with a powerful sedative. As she struggled, her attacker suddenly stopped and left. The woman in this attack had actually attended a Harvard event that Mueller had organized, which was what led authorities to him. When he finally was questioned in these attacks, Matthew spiraled even further. His wife reported him missing on November 13, 2009. She told police that he had left a note saying he was going off the grid. He sent messages to all of his family explaining that he was suffering from problems that extended beyond even just his mental health, stating, "I lie in terror most of the time and can't keep up with appearances any longer. This is perhaps the least extreme thing I can do to resolve it that does not also expose everybody to criminal liability." His family was worried, but just 2 days later, Mueller called his wife to say that he was in Utah and that he needed her to come pick him up. Only a short time later, she asked him for a divorce. Still, Mueller seemed determined to get back on track. He threw himself back into his profession and was admitted to the state bar in 2011 and began practicing as an immigration lawyer. He was hired by a firm called Reeves & Associates in San Francisco, who wrote a glowing review of him on their website. Before that first year was up, it was clear that something was still wrong, and Mueller left the firm within a year, resigning. Reeves & Associates then filed a complaint against Matthew in U.S. District Court, claiming that, in the days leading up to his resignation, he had been stealing their confidential records, downloading client lists and other sensitive data, and even spending the night at the office in a sleeping bag to accomplish this data theft. Despite the complaints against him, Mueller was able to secure another job in 2013 at another law firm. It soon became clear that this wasn't going to go much better than the last, as Mueller's depression flared up again. He began to miss legal hearings and didn't show up for some cases altogether, behavior that got him in trouble with the California State Bar. Matthew soon left his new firm and stopped taking on cases altogether. His status as an attorney soon changed to inactive. Things spiraled from here, as complaints from dissatisfied clients piled up, and the court eventually ruled that he would need to reimburse some clients for the incompetence he showed as their attorney. He didn't repay them as ordered and was consequently disbarred. Filing for bankruptcy in 2015 and unable to hold down a job, Matthew eventually moved into his parents' vacation home in Lake Tahoe. They thought they were giving their son an opportunity to get back on his feet. In reality, it provided the perfect isolation he would need to begin another series of bizarre crimes, fueled by mental illness or the desire to cause similar devastation in other people's lives. When Dublin police learned all of this information about Matthew, they wasted no time. On June 8th, only 3 days after the failed burglary, police secured an arrest warrant for Matthew and a search warrant for his property, and descended upon the Lake Tahoe home, not sure just what they would find. They caught Matthew coming out of the bathroom, where he seemed surprised to see them, but put up no resistance as they arrested him and began to search the evidence at the property. It soon became very clear that Matthew was their intruder. Among the items recovered from the home was a water gun painted black to look like a real weapon, zip ties, a black wetsuit, and goggles obstructed by surgical tape. Stuck to the tape, on a pair of goggles found in the bedroom, was a long strand of blonde hair. Dublin police made sure to alert nearby jurisdictions for any other crimes that Matthew may have committed, and they went to work going through the mountains of digital data that Matthew stored on computers recovered at the scene. Vallejo City Police were among those departments alerted to the arrest, and as they started to try to see if this could be tied to the case of Denise and Aaron, they realized that the phone left at the Dublin crime scene was the very number that Vallejo police had tracked and that had made 2 phone calls to Aaron Quinn's phone the day that Denise was still reported missing. In the weeks that followed, Vallejo police must have come to the shocking and perhaps humbling realization that Denise and Aaron had been telling the truth. They found Aaron's laptop at the Lake Tahoe home and video footage of Matthew sexually assaulting Denise as she lay helpless, restrained and blindfolded with goggles. This mountain of evidence in hand, the FBI officially arrested Matthew for the kidnapping of Denise Huskins on June 29, 2015. Aaron and Denise had been vindicated, though they still wanted little to do with the media attention surrounding them. And as before, they remained strong and steadfast in their account of what actually happened. In the following weeks, through several court proceedings, interviews, and even Matthew's own account of the crime, we have an idea as to what actually took place on March 23, 2015. Despite any mental illness that Matthew may have had at the time, it's clear from the amount of planning that went into this that he was aware and in control of his actions leading up to and during this crime. He began staking out Aaron's home days before, photographing the property with drones, as crazy as that is, while planning every detail and deception. Matthew wanted his victims to be completely disoriented, and he wanted to convince them that this was all the work of some criminal gang, that there was more than one person. His preparations made, Matthew snuck into Aaron Quinn's 2-story home in the early morning hours of March 23rd, carrying with him all of the tools that he would need. This included a speaker wired to his chest that sounded like hushed voices and a blow-up mannequin dressed in military fatigues, connected to large, bendable wires so that it would stand upright. He set the mannequin up in their bedroom and started shining a flashlight into the sleeping faces of Denise and Aaron. The couple awoke with horror to find an intruder looming over them, dressed in a black wetsuit and leveling what they thought was a pistol at their faces. In reality, this was the water gun recovered by Dublin police, a flashlight and laser pointer attached. A photo of this had even been sent to the Chronicle in the flurry of emails that came after Denise had reappeared. "Wake up," the intruder commanded them over and over. "This is a robbery. We're not here to harm you." Just as Matthew had intended, Aaron and Denise thought they heard other voices and saw figures moving throughout the room. The threat of what might happen to them if they didn't comply, firmly established with his gun drawn, the intruder sought to reassure Aaron and Denise that the group was only there to rob them, that if they followed his instructions, no harm would come to them. Denise and Aaron didn't necessarily believe this, but clung to hope that it might be true. When the intruder calmly instructed Denise to zip-tie Aaron's hands behind his back and his feet together, she complied. The couple was further unnerved that the intruder seemed to know them, calling Aaron by name. He was also strangely complimentary, telling Denise that she was doing a great job. Once Aaron was bound, Matthew zip-tied Denise's hands behind her back and her feet together and dragged both of them to the floor of Aaron's closet. "My hope was that they were stealing my TV and valuables, but I was afraid it was going to get worse," Quinn later testified at trial. "I was terrified that this was going to get worse." The attacker demanded passwords to his phone and computers. This man knew Aaron's name, information about his finances, where his family lived, which all helped to build this fiction that it was the work of a highly organized criminal group. Matthew then forced Aaron and Denise to ingest some kind of sedative, possibly a combination of NyQuil and Valium. He blindfolded them with goggles covered in surgical tape and put headphones over their ears in a kind of disorienting sensory deprivation. Denise's headset played soothing music. Aaron's played a more ominous, pre-recorded message meant to further convince Aaron that this was the work of a group of criminals. The recording warned him that if he resisted, the group would shock Denise with electricity and cut her face. Aaron was then informed that this was not the end of their ordeal, that Denise was to be kidnapped and held for ransom. Aaron would have to make 2 payments of $8,500 to the group in order to secure Denise's safe return. The couple lay shaking with fear, blinded, afraid to try to communicate, sure that one of the members of the group was watching them while the others raided the home. In reality, it was only Matthew enacting this terrible plan, submitting both to a kind of psychological torture as he stole Aaron's laptop, got the keys to his car, and set up a Wi-Fi camera in the living room, pointed at the couch. He returned to the couple and forced Aaron to lay on his stomach on that same couch. He told Aaron that he was being watched on the camera, that if he tried to contact police, they would know. Then the assailant pulled out a roll of tape and mapped out a perimeter on the floor with it, instructing Aaron that he was not to leave that area while he worked on getting Denise's ransom. Matthew then turned his attention to Denise. He drove off with her in Aaron's Toyota Camry, eventually ditching it near where he had parked his own vehicle and moving Denise to his own trunk as he began the nearly 3-hour drive to his parents' home in Lake Tahoe. As the vehicle lurched forward, Denise's mind raced with fear as she thought of what she might endure next. It sounded like they were driving on a 2-lane highway as she lay there, fighting to stay alert, the left side of her body becoming numb. She kept imagining some car accident where she wouldn't be able to get out, where the car would burst into flames with her entombed there, burned alive in the trunk. Denise felt herself slipping in and out of consciousness as the stress and sedatives caught up with her, as Aaron, still restrained on his own couch in the now empty house, was fighting to stay awake. Soon, both had passed out from the sedatives. When Denise came to, she was at the Muller vacation home in Lake Tahoe, though she was still blindfolded and had no idea what would happen next. Her captor tried to lift her from the trunk, but ended up dropping her onto the ground and falling on top of her. She was then simply dragged to the house, where she could hear somebody scrubbing and cleaning a bathroom. In her mind, one of her kidnappers was cleaning the remains of a previous victim. Huskins later testified, "I thought that this is going to be one of those situations you see in horror films and TV shows. Things you don't think will ever happen to you. I thought he was cleaning the bloody remains of a prior victim and getting the house ready for me." And yet, she was determined not to let her abductor have the satisfaction of seeing her in pain. "If this was my last moment, I would not go out screaming in terror," she said, showing a remarkable degree of courage. She would need all of the courage she had for the coming hours. Matthew then brought Huskins inside, forcing her to bathe and confining her to a bedroom. She testified that the man described being in a black market startup company that could be hired by people to fulfill financial or personal debts. She thought that if she could only humanize herself to this man, that maybe he wouldn't harm and kill her. When he returned, Denise shared with him a past trauma, details of a sexual assault that she had suffered when she was young. Cruelly, Matthew told her that he was going to rape her, that he was going to film it, and that she had to make it look like it was consensual. He blamed this fabricated criminal group, suggesting that he didn't want to rape her, that it was required so that they could retain it as blackmail to prevent her from going to the police after she was released, that they would release the footage online if she did so. Denise lay motionless as her attacker became her rapist, chained with a bicycle lock to the bed and still blindfolded. Back at Aaron's house, he was able to free himself from his bonds and rip the goggles from his face. He was being filmed by a camera, as the intruder had promised, and he saw a line of tape around the couch as his perimeter. "I took a moment because I thought I was killing Denise," Quinn later said as he weighed the agonizing decision to call police. I decided I had no other choice. Aaron believed that the police would be the best equipped to handle what was going on and made that difficult call to 911. It was close to 2 p.m. For Denise, the physical torment continued along with the psychological. Matthew admitted that she and Aaron were good people, that they didn't deserve what was happening to them. And yet, despite this, he decided to rape her again, trying to distance himself from the act, telling her that the first rape wasn't convincing enough, that this time she would have to be sure that she made it seem consensual. Denise testified, "I thought, I can't control any of this. I'm helpless. I'm drugged. I wasn't going to let him see me be hysterical." With her blindfold still on, she tried to imagine that she was in a different place. As another day passed, Denise's attacker allowed her to hear some of the coverage of the search for her. Her heart sank as she heard her father's voice telling her to stay strong. She became convinced that her attacker intended to kill her and began searching for a weapon to at least go out fighting. To her surprise, it was around this time that Matthew told her he was planning to release her in her hometown of Huntington Beach to avoid the media attention in the Bay Area. At 2 a.m. on March 25th, Matthew forced her to drink another concoction of sedative and led her blindfolded to his car. He assured Denise he was going to release her as promised. Denise did not believe him as the car rolled into motion. For hours, she drifted in and out of consciousness in fear as her assailant drove. Finally, she felt the car stop. She imagined a bullet ripping through her skull and her body being flung into a ravine. Matthew told her that he wished they could have met under different circumstances. Her pulse racing, she heard a door close behind her, heard his car speed off. She waited a moment, took a breath, and removed the goggles. She was alone, and she recognized where she was. Huntington Beach, her hometown. He had let her go. The sedative still coursing through her, she knew that she had to let Aaron and her family know that she was alive. Local police arrived and she gave her statement, but she could already hear the skepticism in the voices of the Vallejo police in her call. At the advice of a family member who was a lawyer, Denise decided to conduct all further contact with police through her attorney. She didn't know at the time that she wouldn't be believed, that police would accuse her of not acting like a kidnapping victim. It was months before she would be vindicated, though there must have been some large measure of relief when police finally admitted their mistake and publicly named Matthew Muller as the suspect for what they now admitted was a crime. The apology they received from the police likely wasn't the one they were hoping for, the department sending a vague letter in late July that admitted that they had been mistaken regarding Denise and Aaron. The public apology never came, which must have been a slap in the face given the very public way the department first accused them of lying and wasting department resources. A few months later, on September 18th, Matthew Muller pleaded no contest to the Dublin home invasion. He was then arraigned in federal court on one case of kidnapping a few days later, and it seemed that the sentencing and court proceedings might go smoothly for Denise and Aaron, as Matthew actually admitted his crimes to police. Though it took about a year, Matthew Muller ultimately pleaded guilty in federal court to the kidnapping charge. As part of their plea agreement, Matthew was shown some degree of leniency and sentenced to 40 years in federal prison rather than life. In court during sentencing, Denise said, "Once released, I couldn't fathom the pain that was to come. I felt like a little girl, scared, wanting to hear the voices of my parents saying it's okay." Quinn told Muller that he strategically destroyed our lives. "I cannot and will not ever be the same," he said. Muller, seeming to have a clear mind, stated, "I'm sick with shame that my actions have brought such devastation. I hope my imprisonment can bring closure to Aaron and Denise, and I'm prepared for any sentence the court imposes." After suffering so much abuse and harm to their reputations, not to mention the trauma of the crime itself, going back to a regular life was impossible for Aaron and Denise. Both had lost their jobs in the media circus that surrounded the case, and there were plenty of people that still believed the couple fabricated the story and continued to condemn them publicly. Denise and Aaron ended up filing a lawsuit against the Vallejo Police Department for slander and defamation of character. They were angry not only with the damage to their reputations and the spotlight that they never wanted, but also with the police response and their refusal to even investigate the claims that Aaron made, that both of them made when Denise was released. This left a dangerous man on the loose that traumatized another couple. The Dublin attack could easily have turned into another case of kidnapping, rape, even worse, and it could have happened again and again, if not for the tireless work of the Dublin Police Department. Denise and Aaron wanted to ensure that the Vallejo police would think twice before acting so carelessly again. In the end, the case was settled out of court, and Denise and Aaron began the slow work of trying to rebuild their lives. They were also adamant that Matthew should be held accountable for all of his crimes, even those that would be the most difficult to testify to in court. Despite initially seeming to cooperate and take responsibility for his actions, Matthew eventually changed his mind and has since sought to have the federal conviction vacated, claiming ineffective assistance of counsel. He has also said that he only pled guilty to the federal charges because he felt so bad for Denise and Aaron, and with how police mishandled their case. Matthew has also decided to try to fight the new charges brought against him, which include 2 charges of rape, kidnapping for ransom, false imprisonment, burglary, and robbery. In the county case, Matthew asked to represent himself at trial. It seems that Matthew is going to try for some kind of insanity defense. If his appeal fails and he is found guilty of the county charges, chances are good that Matthew Muller will spend the rest of his life in prison, a sentence that Matthew himself seems to acknowledge might be what is needed for the safety of the community. Denise and Aaron have remained strong advocates for themselves, not allowing Matthew any further control of their lives as they work to ensure a life sentence. They have testified in some pretrial proceedings and shown courage while recounting some of the most horrific details of their assault and the subsequent anguish they faced. Going through such hell together seems to have only brought the two of them closer. They married in late 2018 and are in the process of building a new life together. Matthew's county case and federal appeal are still working their way through the courts as of this recording in spring of 2020. That's it for today. If you want to get in touch, you can reach me at crimeandsacrifice.com. We'll have show notes that include transcripts for each episode, all of the resources we used, photos. The other thing that's really important, since we are just starting off, is if there's any way you can rate the show, write a review for us, especially on Apple Podcasts or wherever you're getting this. Subscribe, download, that's so important, just in terms of helping other people see the show. It would mean a lot. Thank you all so much for listening to the Crime and Sacrifice podcast. What kind of person will you choose to be?